So let's talk about the speaker for today. His name is Adam Lewinberg. He is the president and CEO of Postal Advocate, the only mail audit and recovery firm in the US and Canada. We manage a portfolio of over 185,000 pieces of mailing equipment and over 110,000 online postage users for the largest US companies. He speaks and teaches nationally on mail savings and industry trends. He was the former industry co-chair of the Boston PCC and Mail Systems Management Association. He has certifications in CMDSS and MDC. He is also a featured writer for Mailing Systems Technology magazine. He also worked for one of the largest mailing vendors for over 17 years as the director of national sales for Presort, tabletop inserters, addressing hardware, software, and green offerings. He was one of the top 5 account managers nationally, working with some of the nation's largest accounts. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you, everybody. Very exciting. What does anyone want to hear more in an afternoon than to talk about a USPS rate change? Well, we're going to go into the details of it. So we're going to cover what rates are changing, how this impacts you, what do you need to do to make sure that you're compliant. Throughout this entire presentation, we're going to be going through savings tips. How do you offset these increases in your world? And a bunch of thoughts around USPS. The new rates take effect on Sunday, July 12th, 2026. Rates always go into effect on the Sunday prior to the Monday work week, and to make sure that you're compliant prior to starting your week. There's so many different rate structures with the Postal Service, and we're not going to cover all of them. There's just no way to, and most of them are niche that not everyone is going to use. So we're covering the most common rate structures used by the majority of you that are on this call. If you want more detail on a specific rate class and service, go to the USPS Postal Explorer website at this address, and they'll have the details on all the other rate changes. So let's talk about what's actually happening with the Postal Service. These are the volumes of mail over the last 15 years from the Postal Service. Whenever you hear the news, everyone says mail is dying, it's dead, it's going down by huge amounts. Well, I want to show you what's really happening. We've been tracking this now for over 20 years, and I want to show you the things that you should think about. Mail's broken out into basically these 4 categories: first class mail, marketing mail, shipping, and periodicals. The biggest change overall has happened in first class mail and in periodicals. Let's start with periodicals because it's easy. We just don't get as many magazines and newspapers to our homes as we used to. We read them on Kindles and iPads and phones and things like that. So we all understand that category. In first class mail, the volume over the last 5 years has gone down 20%. And you can see on an annual basis, it's give or take around 4 or 5% that it's going down. Marketing mail is a little bit different. The volumes go down a much smaller amount on an average year, 1 or 2%. But there were correction periods, like we had 15% declines in 2020 due to COVID. If you looked into 2007 during that recession, there was a big decline that like reset volumes. But on a normal year, volumes are going down by smaller amounts. Shipping volumes have been going up and down. The Postal Service puts a lot of focus onto shipping volumes. This year, they were down about 6%, but in other years, they could be back up. But to take that a step further, the biggest thing that we hear about when you listen to the media, you'll hear about they're really going to focus on first class mail, and they're going to say first class mail is dead. And I want to like put some like put some clarity to that. If you think about the mail that you send in your office, small day-to-day miscellaneous pieces, communications you might do with friends, that volume's going down pretty drastically. And if you look at this letter category, that's gone down 66% over the last 15 years and 37% in the last 5. But if you look at pre-sort, and pre-sort is the production mail that we do that a lot of the mailers in this call will use, whether you use a pre-sort service, whether you send it to an outsourced provider and they're, running it through their software, or whether you have a big enough operation to do it in-house. The pre-sort volumes, which makes up 70 or 80% of USPS first class volumes, is only going down a couple percent per year. And over the last 5 years, has only gone down 13%. So when people talk about mail is dying, in the onesie twosie pieces, yeah, maybe that part's going away and it's drifting away. Statement production, invoices, checks, large mail streams that we send out is not going away. We look at parcel shipments. What's really happened in the parcel shipments is priority mail went down 58% in the last 5 years. But only because the Postal Service came out with a new service called Ground Advantage, which we'll talk more about, that basically took up 58% of the volume, keeping their volume overall pretty flat. So just you can't listen to the news about what they're saying. You have to look at the details of it. And I want to give you a picture of what's happening. Now, the truth of the matter is, we have had the largest postage increases in the history of the Postal Service over the last 5 years. Over the last 5 years, including this rate change, we have had 42 to 79% increases. Like, stop and think about that for a second. Like it's huge. We've never had these types of changes in the Postal Service before. If you went to the previous 5 years before that, you can see this chart at the bottom. Rates went down from like -1%, like rates actually went, down a little bit, to as high as 12% for a retail letter. And that was in the previous 5 years. Never in the history of the Postal Service have we seen this type of increase, and it's happening more frequently. We're getting them twice a year. We're getting them in different classes. We can expect this to continue for the following reasons. As letter volumes drop, they have to make up for those drops with rate increases. Every time they stop at your home or a business or every one of stops, they have an increased number of those stops and they have less mail per stop. So it costs them more to run their operations. Postal Service is trying to adapt to our changing mailing needs, and their only real tool in that is basically to increase rates. And even on that tool, they are kind of handcuffed because they can only raise rates a certain amount per rate change. So the Postal Service has some regulation that's out there trying to get so they can actually do higher rate changes and try to make themselves, revenue neutral or profitable as opposed to losing money. But just wanted to give everyone a couple minutes before we got into the actual rates, talk about what's actually happening with these rate structures and what's actually happening at the Postal Service. So let's talk about what is increasing. The first thing people think about is a first class single piece of mail. It's going up 5.1% for a 1 ounce letter. It's going from 78 cents to 82 cents, a 5.1% increase. As items get heavier, the additional ounce rate is not changing. So as these items get heavier, the increased percentage goes down. Flats, a 1 ounce flat's going from $1.63 to $1.69. The additional ounce rate for flats is changing a bit. It's kind of kludgy. Like it used to be where every single additional ounce, whether it was letter or flat, was the same exact rate. Well, the post office changed that, and they're making it where the rates change based on the weights. The additional ounces change for flats based if it's a 4 ounce piece or a 6 ounce piece or a 12 ounce piece. Overall, those additional ounce rates are going up anywhere from the same, they're locked in and at no increase, to 2 cents more. And that's why the percentage increases, are just as high for the, higher for the 1 ounce as it is for the higher weights. Postcards are having some of the biggest increases at 6.6%, from 61 to 65 cents. Now, most of the people on this call don't use the single piece letter rate. They have mail equipment, whether you have postage meters or you use online postage, and you don't pay the single piece rate we just looked at. You pay a discounted rate, which was 74 cents, and that's going up 4 cents as well to 78 cents, about a 5.4% increase. But I want to point out, by using metering technology, whether it's, like I said, postage meters or online postage systems, you save about 5%. And if you think about someone who does $10,000 a year in postage through a metering device, saves about $513 a year. Someone who spends $1 million saves $51,000 a year just by having that equipment. First class commercial. So all that pre-sorted volume that we talked about that's not going down at the same percentages, that makes up 70% of the mail volume. There are some different changes. Overall, you're getting about a 5% increase for automation letters. And you can see it's based on the sortation level of that mail. And quick, guide of how to think of sortation if you're not an expert in this. Think about everybody knows one zip code in the country. My team gets tired of me every time I use this example, but everyone only knows one zip code, 90210, because you've heard of the show or you watched it when you were young. So if I have 150 pieces going to a 5-digit zip code, I get the 5-digit rate. If I have 150 pieces going to a schematic of 3-digit zip codes like 902, 906, 907, I get that rate. And then everything else gets a mixed rate. Every other piece in your mailing that doesn't qualify, that you don't have any density to, just gets the mixed AADC rate. So you can see overall those rates are going up about 5% for letters, you know, anywhere between 2 to 7% for flats, and postcards are getting the highest at 7 to 8%. One big change is the post office for letters used to basically have a rate called AADC, Automated Area Distribution Center. They basically eliminated that for the future, and they're having everybody in 3-digit rates. It used to be people used to have everything into one single 3-digit. Now they're grouping schematics of 3 digits, and they said there's no reason for us to have separate categories for these. So now everything defaults to a 3-digit. I have asked some of the top experts in the mail industry, do they think that the change from having AADC to 3 digits is going to impact sort levels, rates, how many pieces qualify? I've not been able to get an answer that anyone who tells me that it's going to drastically impact anybody's rate structures or how many pieces qualify. But there's still more out that, and we're still doing research. There's a couple other discounts that you want to think about. Seamless acceptance. The savings is staying the same at 0.002. Full service IMB is staying the same at 0.005. And there was a new last rate change, a discount called SCF pallet discount, which was 0.004 and it's being reduced to 0.003. It's staying the same for postcards and it's going down, a hundredth of a cent for flats. So let's talk about some saving strategies for first class mail. One of the easiest best is if we scroll back, I'm just going to scroll back for a second. The highest rate increases have been for your flats. First class single piece flats went up 62%. First class auto flats went up 79%. Post office is making a clear message with this, saying that if you're doing flats, we're losing money on them. We're going to raise rates to the highest levels possible. So if you can convert your flats to 6x9 envelopes by folding things in half, as you can see from this envelope example, you can save 53 to 73%, on your mail. And people don't think about this, and they've always sent them in flats, and they say, "Oh, we need to do it this way." But sometimes when we give people just simple ideas, they say, "Hey, these pieces that are less than 15 sheets, you should really look at converting those down." Any outsourcer that you use can typically get up to 15 sheets into a 6x9 envelope, and you look at the savings. If you're sending a flat that has 8 sheets of paper, it costs $2.27 for a single piece flat. If you fold it in half, it goes to $1.07. If you use a pre-sort service, that rate is for up to 3.5 ounces. It goes down to 70 cents. And if you automate it yourself in-house, it goes to 62.1 to 71 cents. Not even automating in-house if you outsource it as well. So you can see 53 to 73% savings you can get on these types of mailings by just folding the piece. Other savings options. We talked about the first one, using postage meters. If you're buying stamps at the Postal Service, you can save 4 cents a piece by just using a meter or an online postage solution. Those start typically at around $15 a month. If you have mailings over 500 pieces per day or 1,000 pieces at one time, consider using a pre-sort service. There's a few hundred pre-sort services throughout the country that will pick up your mail, meter them at lower postage rates, and get savings. Automate your mailings in-house or through an outside printer. If you're doing a mailing and you're just sitting there folding and stuffing it in-house and it's decent enough size, consider just having someone else do it for you. They will have the software to get you the automation rates. The pre-sorted automation levels, and this is a really big distinction, go up to 3.5 ounces at the 1 ounce rate. So you think about, a 1 ounce piece of mail is 82 cents, 78 cents if it's metered. A 3 ounce piece is $1.36. That same piece through a pre-sort service is 71 cents. Or if you use an outsort mail service and they're sorting the mail for you, it's 62 to 71 cents. So huge difference you can get there. Flats and postcards have the same automation rates as letters. The same they apply for the same discounts. So don't think because you're doing a postcard or a flat, you can't get these same pre-sort discounts or automation discounts. And if you're doing generic content, like every letter is the same, there's no personalized content in it besides maybe the name of the person, um, you could move that mail from first class to marketing mail, and you could see the rates go down to, 39 to 47 cents. If you're a nonprofit, it goes down to 19 to 26 cents. So it's just understanding the mailings you're sending and knowing what options are available for you. But these are the ways, you know, these are your options to reduce cost on first class mail. Marketing mail. So marketing mail, we're getting a 6 to 8% increase for letters, 4 to 8% for nonprofits. Flats are increasing 2 to 7%, 3 to 8% for nonprofits. And again, they've eliminated the AADC rate structure and they've moved that just to the 3 digit. So you see all the new rate structures just move everything from AADC to 3 digit. For some people, that will be a slight increase in what they're paying if they're not qualifying for the AADC. But I think overall, it's going to be pretty neutral for people. I don't think that people are going to see a drastic change in their rate structures. With flats for marketing mail, there's two ways that you rate flats. Under 4 ounces is a flat rate. This is a rate for up to 4 ounces, no matter like, you know, meeting the core size requirements. If it's over 4 ounces, it goes to a per piece rate and a per pound rate. So if a piece is 8 ounces, as an example, you take the per pound rate of 74.2 and you divide it in half because it's a half a pound. And so that is whatever that is, 36.1, I guess. So that would be the rate structure. There are 37.1. That would be the rate structure that you would pay for the per pound plus the per piece rate. So when you look at that across every weight break, we looked at what's the difference in marketing mail flats. What type of increase are you dealing with based on your weight? So you can see 2 to 6% rate increases. You're getting bigger rate increases on the pieces that you can't sort as deeply. Pieces that you can sort really deeply, you get the lowest rate increase. And as items get heavier, you can see that the rate increases change and add even more. And we ran those numbers for commercial and then for nonprofit, so you can see your impact. So what are marketing mail savings options? So the first and the biggest is called entry discounts. And what that means is someone is moving your marketing mail piece closer to its final destination to the sectional center facility that supports that area where that mail is going. So there's about 200 sectional center facilities throughout the country. And so what happens typically is you outsource these marketing mailings. Most marketing mailings is not done in your own office. You send it to a print mail service who prints the item and mails it for you. If you're local, this is really easy. If all your mailings are local and they're sending it back into the local area, it's not a problem. But these outsourced providers will have relationships with transportation network that will physically truck your mail closer to its end recipient, to those sectional center facilities. And today you save 1.7 cents a piece by moving your pieces to a sectional center facility. Starting in July, that goes up to 2.1 cents. It's 24% increase. You get 24% more savings in this category, next month. For flats, you save about 8% more. It goes from 3.8 to 4.1 cents. And for flats over 4 ounces, it goes up 17%, 0.312 to 36.4. You save an extra, basically 5.2 cents per piece. So it's very important to think about these entry discounts because this is the number one way that you want to differentiate outsourcers that you're looking at is to see what percentage of your mail can they move to these sectional center facilities to get you these savings. You also want to make sure that your outsourced provider is giving you the benefit of the half a cent full service intelligent mail option which saves you a half a cent, and you want to make sure they're passing that on to you. If they don't have full service intelligent mail, do they have seamless acceptance, which saves them 2 cents? And are they getting your mail qualifying for the SCF pallet discount, which saves an extra 3 cents, 0.03 cents, excuse me. So the point is you have to pay attention to these discounts. You want to ask your service providers if they're getting these for you and or are they, pocketing those savings themselves. And again, you want to convert your lightweight flats wherever possible from flat to letter. And that could be folding pieces in half. It could be maximizing the maximum sizes you can get a letter. But if you look at a flat that goes up to 4 ounces, that's 48 cents to $1.26. If that piece can just be shrunk down, whether it's folded or just using the letter size requirements, that piece goes to 18 to 47 cents. And it also will get lower rate increases. So we talked about those entry level discounts, and I want to show you the impact of your pieces. And if you look here, it really only qualifies for items that you're sorting to 5 digit or 3 digit. So that's why we've compared. And we've compared what is the rate if you don't use entry discounts to the rate if you do use entry discounts. And you save about 5% on letters, overall, 4 to 5% on flats that are 4 to 5% on flats that are up to 4 ounces. But for heavier weight flats, look how important it becomes. Anywhere between 10% and 25% savings on those by moving those flats. It's really important for heavyweight flats to move them to your sectional center facilities because the savings are so great. And the savings are even bigger for your nonprofit. It's even more impactful because the nonprofit postage rate is so much lower. The entry discount's the same, whether you're commercial or nonprofit. It just makes a much bigger impact on your total cost for nonprofit. Priority mail. So priority mails, just to give you a little background, it's the most popular service, up to 13 ounces to 70 pounds, defaults to priority mail, 1 to 3 day delivery throughout the country. I've looked at the maps. I've looked at their calculators of time. Don't expect 1 day delivery for anything. It's a very small area that the post office guarantees next day delivery for, or not guarantees, but states even next day delivery. Expect 2 to 3 day delivery for priority mail overall. 9 basic zones. In April 26th, Post Office announced its first ever fuel surcharge. And fuel surcharge, they basically were, if you're using UPS or FedEx, they put a fuel surcharge as a separate line item on your bill. Postal Service doesn't have that ability to. So they basically just said we're doing a flat across the board 8% increase to handle the fuel surcharge. And that's going to be in effect at least through this year. So just wanted to point out across the board, you're getting an 8% discount. I mean, an 8% increase on your rate structures. There are ways we're going to talk about if you're metering those pieces, just running them through your meter, and you can switch to a 4x6 shipping label. There's savings that are going to be pretty sizable, which we'll talk about. And oh, actually, let me point it out here. And the difference between the priority mail, if you use the retail rate, which is just metering, or the commercial rate, which is having um, printing a 4x6 shipping label, you could see is anywhere between 12 and 21% based on the weights. Priority Mail Express, same story, flat 8% increase. Priority Mail Express is 1 to 2 day guaranteed delivery throughout the country. And there had the same 8% flat increase. And again, they have the same retail rate and commercial rate, and the commercial rates will save you 9 to 13%. Ground Advantage. I want to talk a little bit more about Ground Advantage because I think there's some significant things to pull out. So first off, this is the fastest growing service of the Postal Service. We saw Priority Mail was going down by 58%. Ground Advantage, is increasing by that same 58%. It's instead of 2 to 3 day delivery of Priority Mail, it's 2 to 5 day delivery throughout the U.S. It's basically the same delivery objective you would get on a first class letter or flat you get, which is 2 to 5 day delivery, you get with Ground Advantage. It covers anything from 4 ounces to 70 pounds, one standard service regardless of weight. It replaced the following services we used to have that many of which nobody understood. People used first class package service, which was for items up to a pound, but they didn't use parcel select ground or retail ground. They didn't understand what those were. And so now the post office bundled the whole thing into one service class called Ground Advantage so they could compete better against with UPS and FedEx. $100 of insurance is included, which can be expanded up to 5,000. They have a return service. It can save up to 74% over priority mail, but averages 32% savings over priority. And retail and commercial versions save 14 to 31%. So overall, it got an 8% increase, in April, just like the other classes. The post office used to have, today has 4, 8, and 12-ounce ground advantage rates. Post office basically said for this rate increase, we're not doing that anymore. There's a less than 1 pound rate that's good for any rate structure, which forced the commercial base rates to go up by basically 26% in this. It's still a good value. The savings from retail to commercial still saves 21 to 31%. Um, but they eliminated those 4, 8, and 12-ounce rates. So some savings tips just to make sure that we're on the same page. Whatever you can, if you're metering your mail, and a lot of people meter the priority mail. Anytime that they're running a piece through, they're running their flats through, and it goes over a certain way, it goes over 13 ounces, it automatically defaults to priority mail. You know that because you have to stop and enter a zip code. If you're running those pieces through your meter, you can see the extra cost. 12 to 21% for priority mail, 9 to 13% for express, and 14 to 31% for ground advantage. The systems that can print these 4x6 shipping labels start at about $15 a month. You get free tracking on USPS.com. You could print these shipping labels on Click and Ship, which is the free USPS.com service. It just doesn't give you the commercial rates. You have to unfortunately pay for some service in order to get the commercial rate. There's multiple vendors that can create these labels. The big ones are stamps.com, Indicia, Pitney Bowes, Quadient. Those are the main vendors that, and Shippo, Easy Post, there's about 10 vendors that can do it. The downside is it requires the operator to enter the address in the piece. With a meter, you just run it through your mail machine, you get it out the door, type the zip code, and the postage comes out. With If you want these commercial rates, you have to physically generate the 4x6 shipping label, which means either typing it or importing addresses into a system in which to generate this. Also, some of these online platforms that are out there have their own USPS negotiated service discounts that save an additional 10 to 40% off the commercial rates that we're talking about here. So it's important to know some vendors offer it, some vendors don't. Um, and it's important to understand that because there's discounts above just having the commercial rates that you can get accessible to without having to meet USPS volume requirements of having your own negotiated discount. Other savings tips, compare your packaging. A lot of people will use flat rate packaging, or they might use their own packaging priority mail and not think about it. You have to think about it because here's the rates. If you use the flat rate envelopes, like let's say, which is the most common, it's $11.12. If you use your own packaging, it's $9.04 for a local item, which saves you 23%. But if it's going coast to coast, it's $15.22 and costs you 27% more. So the rule of thumb is if it's less than 600 miles in which you're sending things, you can send things for less money using your own packaging. If it's something that's going coast to coast or farther than the 600 miles, it's going to be less expensive using the free packaging than using your own. So just things to think about when you're sending things because these differences can be significant. You're sending a lot of local stuff to people in the local community and using flat rate envelopes, get your own packaging. Convert your priority mail to ground advantage. We talked about this. This is, a lot of people send priority mail because they've always sent priority mail. We have a lot of financial institutions that are clients that are basically they're sending anything that's over 13 ounces in their statements as just priority mail because they've always done it that way. But when they're sending their statements with letters and flats, they get 2 to 5 day delivery. The only reason they're using priority mail is because that's what they've always done, and they needed to have a postal service because that's less expensive for them than sending it UPS or FedEx with all the UPS and FedEx fees. But they don't need 1 to 3 day delivery. 2 to 5 day delivery is the same thing they get for every other piece. So Ground Advantage can be a great savings, giving them 16 to 33% savings. This is going to look a little confusing, but I want to talk about this because this is the holy grail of the shipping space and how you need to think about shipping. We go to lots of different clients and they say, oh, we have a UPS contract, we have a FedEx contract, we have amazing rates, we have great discounts, we ship everything that way, we don't ship to the Postal Service. Okay, that's great. We're not a sales rep for the Postal Service, but I can tell you if that's your strategy, some of your items you're overpaying. And I'm going to explain exactly where this issue comes up. These are the list prices for UPS and FedEx for their packages, right? If you go in the UPS daily calculator or the FedEx daily calculator, these are their rate structures. A 3 day item that's 5 pounds is $22. And you probably have a negotiated discount. And those negotiated discounts that you have usually range somewhere between 50 and 85%. And you're thinking to yourself, 85% off $22. Great, I'm only paying like $3 or $4 for this shipment. Not so, because all vendors have this thing called minimum service fees. And if you look at any of your UPS or FedEx contracts, they'll say, yes, you have an 80% discount on this because you're such a big customer, but your minimum service charge for a 3 day item is going to be $12. And they're saying no matter what your discount is, you can't go below that minimum service fee. And every one of them has it. And usually minimum service fees, unless you're a mega, mega, mega customer, usually are never less than $9 to $10. Usually they're around 10 or 10 to 12 at the lowest levels. Then UPS and FedEx charge fuel surcharges that are 27 to 28% on top of your discounted rate. So if your rate's $10, they're charging you an extra $2.80 in for a fuel surcharge. If it's going to a residence, the residential fees are $6.50 to $7. And if it's to a slightly rural zip code, and 61% of all zip codes in the country, 24,000 zip codes, get tacked on delivery area surcharges that are $4.50 to $9. So you take that $12 overnight that you're a 3 day service that you were looking at, and it's going and you pack in fuel when now it's, $13. And then it's going to a residence, now it's 20, and now it's going to a delivery area surcharge because it's a rural zip code, it's 25 to 28. Postal Service doesn't charge any of those fees. $8 fuel surcharge we talked about is already baked into their rate. They don't charge for residential, they don't charge delivery area surcharges. So you look at these rates, and in many cases, the post office is significantly less. And it's not that you should move all your volume from UPS or FedEx to the Postal Service. It's that you need tools that can make these calculations for you because this is too complicated a thing to do on the fly, going to your meter or your online postage service and then going back to your free UPS or FedEx system. You can't do it. You need tools that can compare these on the fly to make these calculations for you so you can make better decisions at the point of shipment. The Postal Service also has this thing called cubic rates, which basically UPS and FedEx charge a dimensional rate structure for anything for every package, length times width times height divided by 139. And that determines the weight in which they're going to charge you. Postal Service doesn't dimensionalize anything under a pound, and they actually give you discounts for things that take up smaller fractions of a pound called cubic rates that you can apply for. Usually you need those online postage tools to apply for them. And in many cases, those cubic rates are going to be significantly less expensive based on the size. Zero point 0.3 cubic is, your, 30% of the space of a box. A lot of people send paper, and paper is very low cubic rates because it doesn't take up that much space. It's very dense. So these are the things that you have to consider. So the reasons that we recommend clients to have rate shopping platforms is most clients use UPS free systems, and those default to air rates. And in many cases, the ground services from those carriers are guaranteed next day in local zones. Postal Service has 1 to 3 day service and 2 to 5 day service that you can compare to your 2 day, 3 day, and ground services. And for many of the situations, especially lightweight, going to residents or rural zip codes, is going to be less expensive. The Postal Service has amazing rates for things under a pound. You get access, there are access to other USPS negotiated discounts that can be any savings of 25 to as high as 89%. And they don't charge for the items that we discussed. And that's the reason that the people who want to save money on carrier costs look at having tools, simple tools that can make these comparisons by day of week, time of day, and show you what your options are. So at the point of shipment, you can pick what's the best choice. Our parcel recommendations are prices are going to keep going up faster and faster with the growth in the shipping space. There's limited suppliers, fuel costs keep going up. It's too complicated to calculate a shipping price to rely on only a free carrier, one single free carrier provided system to make your choices. You need ways to compare these rates side by side. As people work from home, they're going to need simple cloud-based tools to support their mail and shipping needs. There are multi-carrier tools available, simple, easy tools that can compare your cost to send. Some of these tools can generate postage stamps. So if you have offices that are trying to mail things, like we're managing 120,000 users on these platforms, most of which is to print postage stamps and then have access to shipping services. But the postage stamp printing was their main reason for going to these things. Um, there are enterprise versions that we can manage, groups of thousands of users on a single platform across hundreds or thousands of locations. Very easy to implement and manage. These solutions create efficiencies and savings. And if you have a lot of offices that have postage meters, 80% of those postage meters do less than $300 a month in postage. And these online postage tools, which is really less than 10 pieces a day, and these online postage tools do a much better job of managing that enterprise spend. Some other rates that are changing. International, there's a ton of international rates. It's too difficult to cover all of them in a session like this. But the international rates that are increasing, the basics that people use, your 1, your 2 ounce, your postcards, small increases, 3%, a decent increase to Canada for 2 ounce, but that's the only thing that's really noticeable on these rate increases. Library mail is increasing about the rates are going down actually in some areas as much as 2%. And on your on your single piece media mail as well, about 2%. I'm gonna have to check that number. We'll check this before we send it out to make sure that this is supposed to be a positive or a negative. Special services, certificate of mailing, 2%, registered, 6.1%. The biggest special service people use is certified mail with return receipt. The cost of certified mail has gone through the roof in the last year, there was a 21% increase in this category. We actually got lucky on this one. But if you want to send a 1 ounce letter with a certified return receipt, a certified green card return receipt, it's $10.98. We recommend people moving to electronic return receipts because it saves $1.74 now for electronic return receipt. Other things that we like about electronic return receipts is that it typically gives you one place that you can access all your return receipts to see have they been delivered, have they been returned, have they been signed, get access to the signatures versus waiting to get a physical green card back in the mail and then have to manage this piece of paper as receipt. You can manage that whole thing electronically. Your permit fees. A lot of you have permits for business reply or postage due or first class or marketing mail. Those are going from $370 to $390. If you're doing business reply, those fees are going up about 5 to 6%. And some areas are going up as high as 9%. We have developed a postage calculator that you can download at our website. And basically, it's a tool that you can plug in your mail volumes. What's your current spend in these different mail classes? And it will calculate what do you need to budget for this rate increase to make sure you're covering yourself. As a rule of thumb, I would say budget at least 5% to make sure that you're covering yourself. If you're doing a lot of marketing mail, you want to probably up that to maybe 6 or 7. But that's how I would try to think about this. But feel free to download this tool and you can calculate how this is going to impact your area. Before June 12th, you know, The You want to make sure that your meter has downloaded or connected to the meter vendor's website. That's not as big of an issue anymore since most meters are constantly connected, but you want to make sure that your meter is connected to the data center of the meter vendor's websites in order to make sure you have the right rates. All of the vendors have rate change resources that you can go to, and they'll be able to give you guides or, resources if you get stuck. If you're curious about any more information about the rate increase, go to the Postal Explorer website from the Postal Service, and they'll be able to provide more information. All the charts that we looked at for the rate increases, we have available on our website at postaladvocate.com. So feel free to go there and download those and have your own cheat sheet of all the rates that got impacted. A quick bit about us. Our goal for our clients is to manage 100% of their mail spends. So whether it's all the mail equipment they have in their offices, enterprise online postage systems, production mail streams, whether it's done inside or outside, USPS accounts that people have, and there are thousands, if not millions, of USPS accounts out there that people have direct relationships with the Postal Service. We manage those for our clients. We get them into our dashboard, give them access to this dashboard, and then put experts through the data to try to figure out ways to save money. Things that we covered today of looking at all those different areas of savings, we're looking through our clients' data to try to see what things are accessible and could be changed. And then we help our clients execute and make those changes and then manage the data day to day. But whether it's metered mail, online postage, permits, PO boxes, outsourced print, pre-sort spends, direct purchases, we're pulling all that together to give our clients 100% view and oversight of this category. Our clients are the top companies in America and actually in the world. We worked with 8 of the top 15 banks, 3 of the top 10 insurance providers, largest healthcare institutions. Frankly, it doesn't make any difference to us what industry it is. It's just that people have disparate mail spends that they need help managing. For any client, we'll do a no cost or obligation mail assessment. And that mail assessment we can do quickly. We ask clients to sign a simple letter of authority that gives us the ability to view your mailing spends. And then we pull together the visibility of all of your spends. So whether it's your metered spends, your permit spends, your outsourced spends, your pre-sort spends, we'll pull together a dashboard with all that information to show you what's happening today, what savings you could expect. And we make this very easy to do by just giving us some basic data levels, like an accounts payable search of the main mail vendors, or some simple reports that you may have accessible to you. So I want to thank everybody for coming to this webinar. We do these as educational content because we feel there's a lot of information the public doesn't know about mail. And, as more and more mail has been outsourced, fewer companies have the level of expertise they need. And we find that this type of thing is at least important to be able to educate people of what's available and what's possible in this space. So we run these continually on rate change on different topics, and we'll send you invites to those. And hopefully there'll be other topics that will be interesting as well. But I want to open this up for any questions. And we really appreciate you being on the call today.
Thank you so much, Adam. So just as a reminder, you guys are currently on mute, so you can put your hand up and I can unmute you, or you can type the question in the chat or in the Q&A section. And also, just as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be available on our website as a link. It will also be available in the post-webinar email that you receive. One question, are these the final rates?
So these are the rates that are published on Postal Explorer on their rate change section as of yesterday. So it's possible the post office makes last minute changes, publishes something else, but these are the rates that we had up to yesterday. And, they obviously don't have that much time to do that, but it's always possible. If there are changes, we'll be updating them in our system and you can download them with the latest and greatest.
Will there be additional rate changes?
Definitely. You can expect that you will get a holiday surge price increase for your packages, which will start earlier and earlier. They're starting like the beginning of October these days because they feel like the holidays have started in the beginning of October, which I think is crazy, but they're all doing that. And you can expect definitely another rate increase in January. It'll definitely be for on the parcel side. We don't know yet if it will be for letters. What I think you have to start thinking about is the post office is pushing harder to have more control of their own rates, which means higher rate changes in the future. I would just plan on expecting higher rate changes in the future.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes,
Well,
a copy of this presentation will be made available also in a link after the session, as well as on our website under the resources for postage updates. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining today. We appreciate your time. We hope you found this educational and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.